Hello, Shayna. Thank you for joining me today. This is a really exciting project that, of course, I told you a little bit about offline, and you have so graciously said yes to allowing me to interview you on yoga therapy and the many benefits of it. So, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so
Would you
much.
like?
Oh, I'm just gonna jump right in and steamroll you and take over now.
That's
Thank
great.
you for letting me be a part of this. I'm very passionate about yoga therapy, and helping people. So I'm honored to get to come share a little bit about my perspective and experiences to hopefully get yoga therapy a little more mainstream.
And that is exactly why we are here today. So I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about you, your journey into becoming a yoga therapist, and would start off that way and have it be a little bit of a dialogue and let's get going.
All right, wonderful. So I started practicing yoga back in 2007 during my first year of college. And my uncle's the one who said, "Oh, you really need to take yoga because it's got all of these benefits for your body, for your mind, for your stress, for your cognition, for..." And he listed all of these millions of wonderful reasons that we all know and love about yoga now. And I was on the fence because I had a heavy course load, and it's actually a pre-veterinary major at the time. And the thing that really cinched it was my mom said, "Oh yeah, it's an easy A, right?" And so I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it. I'll commit to that being one of my electives because it'll help me in my future." Well, little did I know that it was going to become my future and that I would fall in love with yoga. And I'm very grateful that my uncle highly encouraged me, and that my mother knew enough to say the one thing I needed to hear to get me to actually begin down that journey. So, yoga is not typically taught as a college course. I mean, there are lots of colleges that offer it, but most people who do yoga don't do it for college credit, at least not after a while. But our teacher was he was a tennis coach, so he had his approach to doing things. And the one thing that really helped with the way he taught yoga was that he wanted us to be able to take our yoga practice and continue it just like we would take information learned in any other course. So that when we moved to tiny little towns that had no yoga studios, we could still have a yoga practice. And that was wonderful because we had no yoga studio in the town our college was in. We had no yoga studio in the town I grew up in. Uh, I don't know if we had a yoga studio in the town that my husband was first stationed in, but they did have yoga on base. So that was nice for us. So I continued my practice for the first month of school. And towards the end of that month, I went home, spent the weekend with family and friends, and was running an errand for my mother when all of a sudden, this guy coming in the opposite direction of me in the far right lane cuts across the 5 lanes, and my car in the my far right lane hits him, and it spins us around. He was doing about 85. I was doing 35, 40. So they said I was very lucky that I was obeying the speed limit and actually going a little under, because otherwise he would have hit me. But even so, I had a concussion as a result. I had bruising down the entire side of my face, through my neck and shoulder, my chest, all the way around my abdomen into my hip on the other side. Because did you know when you're in a car, you're supposed to be 12 to 18 inches from the steering wheel? I
No, I
didn't
do not know that.
I don't think most of us know, and I've got short legs, and if I remember correctly, you are in the, small but mighty, group with me, and
Yes.
so we like to get in there to be able to reach those accelerators and brakes. However, if you get too close to the steering wheel, what happens is the airbag expands 12 to 18 inches and hits you.
Um,
What's supposed to happen is that it's supposed to expand, start to deflate, and then you hit it. However, I had
mhm,
the opposite happen. So I got a little bit of a concussion, a little bit of bruising, no car, no way back to school, and a mother who was very concerned and locked me in my room. My room didn't have a lock, but uh, she wouldn't let me go back to school. So I felt like I was held hostage for a couple of days. And over that time, all I had to do was study and do yoga. And when you have a concussion, the last thing you want to do is sit and study. So I did a lot of yoga. I did my sun salutations and standing postures and twists and child poses and heart openers, all sorts of things, because I felt stuck and frustrated. So by the time I went for a checkup with our family chiropractor, I uh, was feeling a little looser in my body, but still pretty bruised, still not a lot of focus in my mind. But he said, "Oh, you look pretty rough, but we're going to see if you can do these certain things." So he checked my spine, he checked my ribs, checked my shoulders, and then he wanted to see if I could touch the floor. Well, you know what happens when you ask someone who practices yoga to touch the floor. They're going to reach their arms up overhead, they're going to hinge at their hips, and they're going to take their hands as low to the floor as they can.
mhm,
And I have long hamstrings, and I'd been stuck in my room for a few days. So I just slapped my hands right down on the floor. And I think his jaw slapped down a couple feet away from me. Not literally, but he was floored at the fact that here was this person standing in front of him, battered and bruised and achy and sore to the touch, but I could still move. I could still answer questions pretty easily despite having had a concussion. And the moment that I stood back up and he looked at me and he's like, "Seriously, you do not know how lucky you are to have been practicing yoga. That saved you so much recovery time, so many more things that could have gone wrong that could have been happening in your body." And it it hit me and it landed. And I continued
mhm.
to practice yoga ever since. I didn't always have the most diligent practice, but it stayed with me forever. And I even retook the course my senior year when I had a little space in my schedule so that I could go back and relearn and retry some things. So that
Nice.
was a big joy to re experience that. Then, several years later, after I had experienced different classes, different styles, I'd built my own personal practice. I went to a studio one day, and the instructor was a lady, I think in her mid to late 60s. She'd already retired from her first career. Her husband had bought a building and she did just donation based yoga classes, she and one or two other teachers. So I was in, I want to say, downward facing dog. And all of a sudden it hit me. This is what I want to do someday. This feeling, this the way my body and my mind are just together and united, and I feel such joy and peace. I want to help people feel this
Mm.
someday when I'm skilled enough, when I'm old and gray. I did not think that would be anywhere in my immediate future. A few years later, I met some wonderful instructors who actually started talking to me about becoming a yoga instructor, not a yoga therapist because they're different. But I said, "Well, I'm not ready yet. I can't do handstands. I can't do all those crazy bendy poses that other people do." And they're like, "But Why would you need to? I got a big lesson about what yoga is and what it isn't from them, and they nurtured and encouraged me to go on and begin my training. I completed a 200-hour yoga training and then a 300-hour yoga training. Some people do them both at once, a 500-hour. I did mine separately because we were moving to Texas in the middle of all of that. And during my 300-hour training, I received encouragement to go on and learn how to do massage. So I went to a massage school mostly because I thought Thai massage was really neat. And I wanted to work it into teaching yoga and helping people and being more comfortable with hands on. I received that licensure and then went on to yoga therapy school. And my husband said, someday, Shayna, someday you need to stop going to school and just do one thing. And I've come to realize that when I can create that one thing that I want to do, which will be comprised of all of these different things that I'm learning, that I will stop going to school and I will just do my one thing, which maybe they'll have a name for at that point. Did I touch on enough of what you had asked me at the beginning, or did I steamroll right past that?
No, 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 no. I was asking about your journey
Okay.
and you that unfolded beautifully. So deciding to become a yoga therapist after being a or excuse me, a yoga teacher to being a massage therapist, how did that lead you to becoming a yoga therapist as we know you now? Because you are now certified, you've now been working in the field, you've worked with clients.
Well, to be perfectly fair and honest, I was going to just do yoga therapy, but COVID decided to happen and it led to some restrictions and changes and shutdowns in the education office where I would have been receiving my funding for school. So
Oh.
by the time the deadline for the program had passed, I was like, well, I'll probably do it next year. I want to do it next year. I'll just take a while to spend time on me and things I want to do. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, I really want to just do the massage program. But going through the massage program made me realize how much I could pull in from yoga to help my massage clients. I gave them lots of recommendations for stretching. I was able to more comfortably and easily help them with hands on assisted stretching because of the poses I knew and how I would tell people to come into poses. I was able to manipulate their body in a slightly different approach from most of the other massage therapists I knew. So one has always led into and fed on and supported the other to where I kind of forget that they're different, which gets me into trouble sometimes. Not trouble, but leads me off course to where I have to redirect that steamroller. Um, yeah, so that's led me to our master's program in yoga therapy, which we finally completed after 2 long years and are now working with the world.
So as you come out of post-COVID, well, post-COVID shutdown, right? Having seen how working with the body through yoga and Thai massage, once you entered into the world of yoga therapy, where we're looking at the individual as a whole, right? How did that affect your viewpoint of what yoga therapy is to you now?
Well, I think with my yoga instructor training, we always saw
Mhm.
the body as a whole. We were very thoroughly entrenched in understanding the Panchakosha system, meaning the 5 layers of the human body. So, looking at people holistically, what does someone need for their physical body, for their muscles, for their joints? What changes do we need to make? What does somebody need for their respiratory system? What kind of breath work can we do? What can we do for their energy, whether it's with movement, with breath, with chanting, with visualization? Uh, I did not realize until after our yoga therapy program, but almost every one of my trainers out of the 5 main trainers I had in my 200-hour and 300-hour yoga training were all yoga therapists.
Oh, okay.
So they were always guiding me in that direction through that perspective without me really having realized it. I think it was just a natural direction I wanted to go in, to where I didn't realize the differences in my training and others until much later with talking to other yoga instructors and teachers. And it's like, well, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you do this? And
Mhm,
their reasoning was fine. It was sound and it was safe, but it didn't have the same effect as what I would offer as a yoga instructor. And then
mm,
in yoga therapy, I realized why that was. I was working with the entire person. And that's not to say that I got it all right before yoga therapy school. I'm sure I don't get it all right now. Who could? But it did make transitioning into that mindset a little easier when I was trying to have a therapeutic goal rather than just an end goal. So
mhm,
we could go see an instructor and say, "Hey, I've got back pain. What can I do, yoga teacher ma'am or yoga teacher sir?" And they can give
mhm,
us wonderful stretches. They can give us a great flow practice that lubricates the joints and gets things moving and decreases sympathetic nervous system activation to allow the body to shift into a rest and just digest state. We don't want to gestate anything, not just from moving. Well, maybe we do. I don't. Um, so the yoga teacher and the yoga instructor might be working towards something that's beneficial, that feels therapeutic, but
mhm,
in an actual therapy, it's going to be a little bit different because we're going to have to look at people more holistically. We'll deep
mhm,
dive into all of their known conditions, their past medical history, to uh, actually set smart goals. So, saying I want my back to feel better isn't the same as I want to be able to sleep through the night 5 out of 7 days a week without waking up in horrible back pain and having to get up and take strong medication that makes me groggy and not get out of bed the next day. Now, that's a little
mm,
word for SMART goal, but we could tweak that. We could work with it.
yeah. It's interesting, I'm thinking a little bit about my own background, coming into yoga, which was very different than yours. My introduction to yoga was specifically just to stretch, and it grew from there into a deeper understanding over each training that I did to what exactly yoga is. So for people out there who don't know this, yoga does mean union, and it is the union of mind, body, and spirit. And you earlier had spoken about the different koshas, so we are looking at the person as a whole from, as you pointed out, the breath, the energy, the body, the mental, the self-reflective, and then the connection, to say higher power, other people.
Sense of
Um,
that part that's just you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That divine piece. So, as I'm, listening to you talk about your journey and I'm, thinking of my journey, so many of us come from very different backgrounds. And I think that is one of the most amazing things that I'm actually learning, even as I go through the interviewing process. I knew it, while we were in school together, but also now as I'm interviewing people and talking to people, just how different our backgrounds are and how each of us very much make up a unique practitioners, and our clients are very unique. And to be able to really sense into the person that you're meeting with and how they can meet you where you're at, but even possibly, share a similar journey could also be very healing for some of the people that we're working with. Because if they understand that, like, say with you, like you had this car accident, and you really began to see the value. And I'm guessing not just the movement, because the movement is definitely part of yoga, but we do it with breath.
Mm.
So since you were immediately coming into that practice of movement and breath, you were able, I'm sure, to regulate your nervous system a little bit after coming out of this major trauma. Whereas some people may not be doing that. And that's one of the many things that we do address in yoga therapy. So without you going through the therapeutic part, you know, in your mind, you are absolutely providing a therapeutic space for your body to heal and your sympathetic nervous system to find balance. And that is something that I don't know that all people know. And this is one of the, reasons why I am doing this podcast, help share, right? All of the many benefits. So everything from being able to bring that body back into a balanced state, but also to really meet and connect with people from different backgrounds. Because for me, the program that I went through, which I think I've shared with you in the past, I felt like my program definitely went through, some of the same things that you had spoken about or spoken into, but I don't know that we went over as deeply some of the therapeutic pieces that you may have gone through, because some of your trainers, or it sounds like most of your trainers, were yoga therapists, you know. And of course, over, in Maryland University of Integrative Health, which is where we're from. So while we were in school, and we were becoming yoga therapists, right? One of the things that we did is we did a lot of research. We did a lot of research as to why yoga can be used in a therapeutic form, right? So maybe we can kind of just explore each piece. So we know that there's the five koshas, in layman's terms, five different layers of the human person, right? And so we have the physical piece. So the physical piece, we're working with postures, we're working with energy, we're working with breath. Um, any thoughts on how you have been able to integrate using breath work, using postures in terms of yoga therapy, and why it has helped? I think you talking about how you came out of your accident was actually a really great example.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we don't realize that we're doing with yoga when we're breathing with the movement is that we're tapping into the nervous system. So, every inhale is a little bit of sympathetic nervous system activation. It's uh, our fight and flight response, but not always fight for your life, but sometimes, oh, I have to survive by getting up out of bed. You're going to have that sympathetic nervous system to get you up and moving so that you don't starve to death lying in bed all day. Every exhalation is going to be that parasympathetic nervous system activation, that rest and digest, so that we can find balance in the nervous system. And with our body, there is a natural balance that comes along just by breathing. So every time you breathe in, you get a little bit of spike, a little energy, you're ready to go. And every time you breathe out, you're ready to let go and rest and relax. So when
Yeah.
we move with our breath, it allows us to let go of that tension we're holding in our shoulders, in our neck. Think about times when you've gone after something's happened. That allows the muscles to relax, even if you don't synchronize it quite how we do in a yoga practice or a yoga therapy session. You're still probably getting that with that letting go of muscles. We intuitively know the science is there to back it up because our bodies have been doing it all along. And then all of a sudden, somebody brings a microscope in or a magnifying glass in and says, why do we do this? What's happening here? What's the scientific connection? And that's how we can take practices from 4,000 years ago and bring them into our living room, into our office, into whatever space we're in, and derive a little bit of benefit from those practices, whether it's a physical practice for our body, a breathing practice for our respiratory system or for our lungs, a mental practice such as a meditation or a visualization. We're not actually magically visualizing that tension going away and having it go away. We're visualizing letting go of something. We're visualizing relaxing so that we can breathe a little more deeply, so that the nervous system relax with each breath, and then the muscles relax with each breath,
Right.
which is why yoga has to be holistic. We have to work through everything because everything's connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a little side note, coming into the program, I was having some pretty big issues with my shoulder. So I don't know if you recall that. I could barely lift my arm. And it was a very eye-opening experience, even knowing as much about yoga as I knew at the time, which was, like a grain of sand on a
Mhm.
beach. um, how much posture, the breath, mental, self-reflective connection, all of those things, really can have a huge effect on our bodies, posturally, because I too had been in a car accident. My posture had been affected. I was walking around in a state of fear. My breath was completely shallow. I was holding it all the time. My system was completely dysregulated. Um, I was trying to move past the injuries, and all the other stuff that was going on in my life without dealing with it, without the self-reflective piece. Um, and so coming into the program and hitting on obviously on all the points that you just brought up, I began to also look at myself a little bit more holistically, more integrative, you know, and then began to really understand how my dysregulated system was affecting my physical body and my mental, status. So, as yoga therapists, when we come in and we're working with people, I think that there's a lot of people out there that think we just work with the physical body, but there is so much more, and I absolutely think that your story about when you were coming out of your car accident, even though you may not have known it at the time, you were able to regulate your nervous system. You were able to move your body and not let those muscles go into that tense, tight, and therefore, possibly weakened state, right? Like you were able to keep moving through all of that. And this is a wonderful example, from actually both of us, 2 different things, right? Where we can say without a doubt that the union of all of these definitely make up a therapeutic space that can help to heal so many people, whether it's cancer, you know, PTSD, trauma, right? Um, so I'm really appreciative that you were able to start us off with this amazing example of why yoga, even when we don't realize it, is therapeutic. Um, is there a specific focus that you have now as a yoga therapist?
I do not have a specific focus as of yet, but I do find that I gravitate towards working with, or I take the most joy from working with clients who have had some kind of physical injury and or trauma that is in their body and they can't seem to get past.
Mm,
And relating back to what you said, a lot of times there is an emotional or a mental component to that. And yoga therapy is kind of sneaky in the way that we think we're working with the shoulder or the back. And then we bring in something that addresses the emotions. And all of a sudden, that shoulder lets go. It
mm,
feels like it almost clicks back into place sometimes. With my own shoulder, I felt that. Or it feels like that muscle that's been really tight just lets go. And all of a sudden, you have range of motion, or that pain feels like it decreases because you've addressed a cause that you didn't realize was a cause.
it's I was just thinking one of the things that we did not actually talk about earlier, I didn't ask. You're actually married to somebody in the military.
Yes, I am. My husband is active duty Air Force. He has been in for almost 13 and a half years now. So we're
Oh, wow.
a little over halfway through his career. And even in a fairly safe career, my husband has never been deployed, never been on front lines. His primarily working with computers. And for a while, he, instead of programming, was a recruiter.
Oh,
If you know anything about recruiters, they talk to people. Programmers don't talk to people. I jest. There are some wonderful extrovert programmers out there. They're great. My husband is not an extrovert. So he was taken out of his little cubby cubicle, told you have to go talk to so many people. You have to get so many people to join the military every month. You have to meet these numbers or you'll get in trouble. And they put us in a tiny little town in the South where there was no military presence for a while. And nobody wanted to talk to recruiters. They didn't trust them. They didn't trust sending school records and medical records, and they fought that process. So my husband got in trouble for not recruiting enough people once and had to drive to his commander to basically be yelled at. So his base was 6 hours away. He drove 6 hours up, was yelled at for wasting time and not recruiting enough people, and then drove 6 hours back down and went back to work with the appointments he had to reschedule to get people to join the military to do his job. It's a system. Sometimes systems are a little broken, sometimes they don't work as well as we'd like them to. Body systems, military systems, school systems, nothing is perfect. Even with that very safe career, my husband has a little bit of PTSD. I don't think I've told him this yet. But if we go to the store and an iPhone goes off, he was given a work iPhone. We have Androids. But that iPhone ringtone, the default, I see his shoulders pull to his ears, that tension, all that anxiety from having to stand and give presentations, from making phone calls, for getting in trouble, for doing everything he was supposed to and not making his goal, comes back in an instant into his muscular tissue, into his nervous system. And he's working through it. He's gotten a lot better now that he's back programming and he's in a different environment and he's enjoying what he's doing, but it's still there. If we don't process things, emotional things, physical things, things we didn't know that were bothering us sometimes, they keep coming back up, which is
Mhm.
why am I angry? I'm hungry is sometimes a hard thing to get to. But mindfulness. Oh, I'm angry every Tuesday, and that's the day I don't have time to eat lunch. Hmm, maybe I should make time for lunch. Little practices that get us tuned into our body, into our breath, into our mind, into our heart can start to make a world of difference in the amount of suffering, the amount of discomfort, the amount of times that we're having to stop and go, what is wrong with me? We may never know. Sometimes it might be, that's just you. You're just goofy, Shayna. You go on tangents. Uh, but sometimes it's, oh, you drank how much caffeine today? You couldn't
Right.
sleep last night because you were on your phone scrolling? You could have done a breathing practice, Shayna. Long, slow exhalations activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and you can sleep a little better.
Right. Yeah. And I think, again, as I'm listening to my thought process comes to what you were saying about your husband, even though it's a fairly safe environment, um, whether it's military, which people, going to war, spouses who are home alone waiting to hopefully hear back from their partners as they go away, single parenting, um, in and out of the military. There are so many things that most people may not consider to be traumatic. And I'm not saying that everything is traumatic. What I'm saying is that, as you pointed out, certain experiences can cause a reaction in the body that we sometimes stay in without realizing that we're stuck, like the software, might be a little, broken, right? So, understanding that even something that would be considered small, to some people could have a long-term effect, such as the sound of an iPhone ringing. I joke all the time I have PTSD from my phone ringing. I never turn the ringer on because for years I had to listen to my phone ringing because different people would call, because I was, the director for several different clubs, health clubs, and so now I hear the ringer and I'm like, "Oh," it's like, "What do they need? What do they want? What do I have to do?" Right? And I don't necessarily consider that to be a traumatic reaction, but it is absolutely a reaction. I hear a phone ring and, I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" So I do think it's important that even as we discuss what yoga therapy can do for you, asking yourself, you know, "Am I breathing?"
Mm.
You know, "How is my posture? How is my thinking process?" You know, because there is a difference between somebody who can be self-reflective and someone who's reactive because their nervous system is out of balance. And as you pointed out, breathing helps to bring the nervous system back into balance, which is pretty critical, I would say, for most of us.
Absolutely. And I think that leads very well into polyvagal.
Yeah.
Uh, Polyvagal theory says we can be in a what we would see normally, expect normally in the sympathetic nervous system activation state, which is fight or flight. I'm going to take you down because you are threatening me, or oh no, I can't handle it. I'm going to run away. And
Mhm.
that could be with something as simple as a charge on your phone bill. I'm going to fight that charge. Or,
Yeah,
oh no, I can't pay that. I'm going to just run away and I'm going to go get some retail therapy because I can't afford my phone bill. Different ways that we respond. But
right.
the dorsal vagal, correct me if I'm wrong on my terminology, is the other end of that.
Yeah, you're right, the frozen
Uh,
state. It's the one that I call possum.
Yes, it's possum. It's
Mhm.
I'm going to pull the blankets over my head and I can't see my phone bill anymore, so it doesn't exist. And kind of interesting thing is that if we look at yoga and Ayurveda, the sister science, uh, when we have someone who is what we would call kapha dominant, or they, uh, I'm going down a rabbit hole, I'm going to tread very carefully here. They have specific qualities and characteristics within their body, their mind, their habits. They might tend to always go into that dorsal state, whereas
Mhm.
somebody else with a different set of characteristics might always tend to be the fighters. Think about how in movies, because we cannot hold all stereotypes to be true, but if you think of a character that had red hair in a movie or a TV show, maybe it's somebody you actually know, I don't know, they might have had a fiery, angry, fighting, defensive type of personality. And that's something that would have fallen into that characteristic. So if that person got that phone bill, got in that car accident, got into that altercation, they would fight. Whereas a person of a different quality, of a different set of characteristics, might always flee. And person one is still here with the blanket over their head with their set of characteristics.
Yeah,
Going out in
and
my rabbit
go
hole.
you took it out a little bit, just a little bit. So, of course, as you mentioned, the Ayurvedic piece of it, so that is a huge piece of also what we do reflect upon as yoga therapists. We are looking at the different elements that make up people, because we do have all of them. So we have Kapha, which you brought up, which is earth. We have ether, air, fire, water. Um, and these qualities, make up all of us, and we're more dominant in one or the other, right? Um, with with a yoga therapist, we're going to be looking at these qualities, and we are going to be working with the breath, say with somebody who might be a little bit more, as you said, kapha dominant, right? It's a little bit more earthy, a little bit more too much groundedness, right? So grounded they can't even get up, right? So encouraging them to use a breath that helps to stimulate the nervous system. So an even breath, or one with movement, right, is something that we're going to help people with. But also, the other piece that we haven't really focused in on too much is we also look at how that person might be thinking and how to help draw the thinking process through into a more self-reflective state. What so if you have somebody, say for instance, who's got the covers over their head and they're not dealing with things, right? How to start to get them to be a little bit slowly and safely into more of a journaling, mental processing, breathing through, right, way, so that they can find a way to move beyond whatever it is that might be causing the disharmony in their body. Because anybody who is going to go that far into that dorsal response, which, like I said, I call possum, right? It's really hard for them to do anything. I see that with a lot of grief, a lot of depression, you know, and so helping those people to find joy, helping those people to move more, right?
Mm, yeah. And grief manifests in so many different ways to
Mhm.
where the person who's able to clear out a closet and move on a month later isn't going to understand why their cousin, their sister, whoever is just stuck. And it can be
Right.
very hard to find the compassion and let someone sit with something when you want them to be okay and to heal. So, the best thing about yoga therapy is that it's individualized. What works for person A may or may not work for person B. If
Mhm.
person B is so stuck that they can't even get out of bed some days, then maybe it's okay. Well, how does it feel not to get out of bed? You don't have to get out of bed if you don't want to and don't need to. How does it feel to just slide your foot off the edge of bed?
Mhm.
When you're that stuck, see if you can just slide your foot out from under the cover and notice all of the sensations you feel. Can you just focus on your little toe? Focus on your big toe. Notice if you can move each of the toes one at a time or make the toes big, make them take up space. That way, more of you feels like it's out of bed. Or maybe, just maybe on that day, you feel just okay enough to let your whole leg come out and your knee bend so that just that baby toe touches the floor.
Yeah.
It is their speed, it is their life, it is their journey. And we're just
Mm.
there to honor that and to offer assistance and to help them mindfully check in on what's available to them. And of
Yes.
course, we are not psychiatrists, we are not psychologists. Most of us do not have any kind of mental health certification. Many do, and they can
Yeah.
offer more assistance in that area. So we can be there as an additional support in conjunction with mental health providers. We
Mhm.
can talk to them, we can share what we're offering, we can take their suggestions of what they think the person needs to work with. And we can offer referrals to those individuals if they don't have somebody. I had a client at the end of the year back in December who was starting to have a tough time. She was a regular yoga student of mine, but she wanted to try something a little different because yoga classes just weren't helping her in the way she needed. And we did one yoga therapy session during which she mentioned, well, I tried psychotherapy once, but the lady just wanted to put me on medicine and I didn't want that. And I was like, I get that. I don't like taking medicine. I
Yeah.
also have asthma, so I have to take that medicine for the rest of my life. I've tried not taking it. My body doesn't react well. So I
Yeah.
take it so that I can feel a little bit better and live a little bit longer. And maybe someday they'll come out with a cure, or maybe someday I'll learn a magic treatment that I won't have to take that medicine. But until then, I have it. And we worked through some practices, and I gave her a home plan of care, a plan for her that she helped me to develop for when she would do the practices, how often, how many times per day, or how many times per week, as well as how long she would do that practice each time she did. And she used that and she said she felt a little bit better. But biggest breakthrough I felt that I had with her was when she told me I started going to therapy again. And she put me on medication, and I'm feeling so much better. And I didn't do that. I merely gave her an ear so that she could talk to someone. And I made her feel validated for not wanting to take the medicine. And maybe, just maybe, saying that it was okay not to take it and okay to take it, let her say, what do I need? So that she could make the best choice for herself.
So you have spoken into one of the biggest things that I absolutely love about yoga therapy. um, having a background in mental health and one of those, having had the, MFT background, it we work collaboratively with our clients. You gave her a safe space to work through, do I want to take this? Do I not want to take it? What are my goals? Not my goals, right? What are the things that I can do? So you basically empowered her to make the decisions that she needed to make for herself. So instead of the doctor telling her that she needed to take medication after seeing her one time, she was able to come back in and say, I'm ready to take the medication. I'm ready to do what I need to do to take care of myself. And offering that space to somebody to really be seen, heard, just held in that space of safety is one of the biggest gifts that I think that we have to offer as yoga therapists. Because you're right, unless you have the extra degree, the extra certifications, education, right, to do the mental health aspect of it, that's not what we are. We help people to find avenues, solutions, options, and we work collaboratively not only with the client, but with the people they're working with. So had she, come back and said to you, "Hey, I'm seeing my therapist. I think it'd be really helpful if you spoke to my therapist to know exactly what's going on," then yes, we can absolutely do that piece. But that is not necessarily our job to do, meaning the therapeutic part. Right. So I know we work with the yamas and the niyamas, the morals and values and ethics, right? We help people to kind of cinch out their or sniff out and smell and, kind of bring through what they need to bring through in terms of what their purpose is, right? Sometimes people don't know, and that's okay because we can come in and we can provide, different ways to explore, who are you today? Not who you were 10 years ago, not who you want to be tomorrow, but who are you today? What affects you today? What is it you need today? Right? So we're right there in the moment, which it sounds like that's exactly where you were with her in the moment, helping her to make her own empowered decisions.
Yeah. Uh, Being in the moment is such a crucial piece to finding joy in your life. When we think about what we do most often, we look back at what we wish we'd done, our shouldas, our couldas, our wouldas. Oh, remember when I was a size 2 and could do all these things? Or, in the future, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to work out. I'm going to be buff. In the future, I'm going to be rich and I'm going to have the iPhone. I was going to say 12, but I think we're past that now. I told you I'm an Android person. Uh, the iPhone 72 and it'll do all these things. Uh, I promise iPhone did not sponsor this, as far as I know. But when we spend so much time focused on the future or the past, we're missing all the joy of the moment. So many
We
people
are.
scroll while they're eating and they
Mhm.
don't really taste the food, or they eat too much food because they don't realize they've gotten full. But you can make an entire meditation out of just eating your dinner, even if you're alone, just taking one bite and noticing the textures, the flavors. I took a bite of rice in my mouth the other day. I was making something and there was just a little bit of rice on the spoon, and I licked it off without thinking about it. And for a moment, I just paused and I held it. And I was like, rice is sweet. I
Mhm.
knew rice was sweet. I knew it fell into that category of tastes, but it's not sugary and it's not fruity and it's not tangy. And it had just a slightly sticky flavor. And when you chewed it up, it just makes even more tiny little bits of rice. And I just kind of sat with that for a moment and realized I had a huge, goofy grin on my face. I was enjoying 3 little pieces of rice that were stuck to a spoon I was about to stick in the dishwasher more than anything I had bought this year,
Mm,
anything I have photographs of that I've been to, that I was in beautiful caverns 6 months ago taking a million photographs, but 3 grains of rice brought me so much joy. Just 30 seconds of sitting there and being with that and tasting it. Yeah, being in the moment is what it's all about because before you know it, all the moments are gone.
absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good reminder for all of us to remember to remain in the moment in such a busy world because you're right, we're on our phones, we're having conversations. I caught myself the other day, having a conversation, but I had to be on the phone doing work, which I have to laugh at because it was work. I mean, on a Sunday. So it could have waited until today, right? But I was like, oh no, I got to do this now. So yes, being in the moment, taking the time to be mindful, which is what you were doing. And I do want to speak into that a little bit now that I'm thinking of it. So many people tell me that they don't know how to do meditations, they don't know how to be mindful. And I always remind them um, that just the fact that you can be meditating and realize you're no longer in a meditation is mindful, and coming back to it, whether it's anchoring through your breath, or looking out at nature and just feeling that grounding, it's still mindful and it still brings you into the present. I recently was working with a new client. He's an older gentleman in his 70s, and he's very what we would call vata, so very mobile, air
Very
dry, right?
pleased.
Um, and I was telling him because he's in his mind a lot. He's very, very vata in his mind as well. And I was telling him, what vata was, and I said, sometimes the best thing is to ground, right? And he goes, "Oh, I love to be in the garden." And I said, "Well, what does it feel like when you're in the garden?" Well, one, he was very mindful when he's in the garden because he's feeling the dirt. He's, growing these little vegetable starts, right? So we went into this whole amazing um, dialogue of his experience when he's in the moment, grounding, his energy. And when he left that particular session, some of the tics that he had were gone.
Mhm.
He was just very calm, very happy, and he was like giving me a hug on the way to the door. Like, thank you. He's like, thank you, thank you. So being able to help our clients be in the moment, is again just another piece of what yoga therapy is. And I think you had brought up something, and it made me think, oh, I should make sure to check that off at the end of our session or our interview as we come to an end. I had asked you, do you have a focus, right? And one of the reasons that I'd asked that is because a lot of yoga therapists do. Even though we work with lots of people, there are some people who definitely, tend to like to work with people that are more, military, the PTSDs, the traumas, right? Um, we have a mutual colleague who is a Parkinson's specialist. She loves working with the elderly and Parkinson's. We have, people that we know that work with cancer. Um, there's one Jessica Buck who I've also interviewed who primarily likes to work with, women's health issues, right? So there are definitely, pockets of where people can find, somebody who's going to focus in on those specific things. And then there's others like ourselves where I think there's more of a general, like my whole thing right out the gate is I just help people find balance in their nervous system because that's when I think about it, that's pretty much, kind of in my mind, the seed, right? Because I've come from a trauma background and I love to work with trauma. So, just trying to help people find balance in their nervous system, which I think is something that you and I both share, is that we can, work with almost anybody. Um, but if you're looking for somebody that has a more specific focus, there are other yoga therapists out there. But if you're looking for somebody who might have like a massage Thai background, um, here we go, the wonderful Shayna Sanders. Which I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today and going down a rabbit hole or two. Um, but it is a fun I think that's one of the things for those of us that are very passionate about yoga therapy. It is easy for us to kind of go down into these little rabbit holes. So I appreciate you sharing your time, your knowledge, and your experiences with all of us.